So we're gonna restart here. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the March 10th, 2021 meeting of the Rotterdam Town Board. This evening, we entered after a agenda review, we entered executive session at approximately 6:57 p.m. with a motion by Mr. Christou, a second by Mr. Signor, with all voting in the affirmative to enter executive session to discuss a potential discipline of employee number 06202018. We then exited executive session at approximately 7:20 p.m. with a motion by Mr. Guidarelli and a second by Mr. Christou. All voting again in the affirmative to exit executive session. So I would ask Ms. Marco to just call the roll again, please. You're muted, Diane.
Diane is muted, but I think she's telling you that you need to end the agenda session before you begin.
Yes. Thank you, Kate.
Sorry, Diane.
Yeah, the agenda review is over. So let's have a motion for exiting the agenda review, please.
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Christou. Is there a second, please?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Signor to exit the agenda review.
Thank you.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, sorry. Thank you very
No,
much. I
that's
know
okay.
it's the normal thing that I do.
Okay. Now we're
So
good.
now we'll call the meeting to order for our March 10th, 2021 meeting. Ms. Marco?
Mr. Christou,
Present.
Mr. Guidarelli,
Present.
Mrs. Miller Herrera,
Present.
Mr. Signor,
Present.
and Mr. Thomasone.
Present.
5 present.
Okay, Ms. Miller Herrera, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. So under supervisor's report, I've got a couple of things to mention. So just a brief update on the executive order 203, which has to do with the Town of Rotterdam's Policing Reform and Reinvention Collaborative. On June 12th, just as a way of background, on June 12th, 2020, Governor Cuomo signed New York State Executive Order 203, requiring that each local government in the state of New York has to adopt a policing reform plan by April 1st, 2021. Executive Order 203 requires that each municipality convene a group of stakeholders to have an open dialogue about the public safety needs of their respective communities and present a plan for adoption by local entities, government entities. So the collaborative was formed in September of 2020, and meetings took place in November of 2020 and January of this year, 2021. The collaborative discussed options for transforming police strategies in the town of Rotterdam and approved a set of recommendations documented in the attached final report. This is our evaluation analysis, if you will. We don't have the final report, but this is the report that you have, the draft that's attached to the agenda. So we have we're calling for a public hearing tonight for March 24th meeting, and we'll adopt the final report at that time. There is also a special meeting which will be called for action on April 1st. That's included in the calendar that you have attached to the meeting, which got updated again, I think, earlier today. So on April 1, we'll have another meeting to adopt the local law after the public has a comment period, if you will, and that meeting begins at 6:30. Another meeting that I have to tell you about has to do for the collaborative, which is anticipated is March 22nd, public hearing for the reform plan. The time and location is TBD right now, but we're trying to offer another option to meet in person by phone and or Zoom. So we'll hopefully be able to get that off the ground soon. And this is another opportunity for public to comment. So there's another public comment opportunity on the 22nd. We'll have our public hearing on the 24th, and then on the 1st we'll have our meeting for that. It'll be a special meeting just for that adoption. And then another just some information about what you may have read in the paper about the about the federal government passing this very large bill. The town of Rotterdam is set to receive about $3.3 million. And until I see the actual documentation telling us what we're supposed to receive and all those kinds of things, I'm going to refrain from saying too much about it, because although I've been informed that there's no strings attached, until I see something in writing, I want to just caution the board on that. But I'll say this much: if there are no strings attached, my recommendation to the board is that we look at the quality of life issues that we know we have in town. You know, when I say quality of life issues, what we have been talking about or hearing from the public for a long time, like a park in the western part of our community, something that's large enough to help with the needs of several groups in the town, from Rotterdam Pop Warner to soccer. There's just a number of other groups and I'll say desires that people have, like a dog park and some other things. So that's going to be a work in progress. I foresee that being a long-term plan, no matter what we do. The other thing is that as far as the funds go, I don't want to see us expending money on salary and benefits. I think we need to invest this money in improvements that will last beyond our tenure on the board. And, we're talking about sidewalks and also obviously the highway garage and other important matters that, again, are going to last beyond us. I don't want to speak for the highway superintendent, but we did have a call today, and we'll be talking about more of these kinds of things in the near future. So that's all I have to say on that until we get the documentation, until we get the actual paperwork that tells us what we can or cannot do. Again, no strings attached. I think I think we'll work towards that. We'll discuss that later, again, as we get more on it. At this time, I'd like to call for public comment, privilege of the floor, for anyone who'd like to speak on any topic. You have 4 minutes, please, to speak, and I would ask that you state your name and address for the record and address me with your comments. And is there anyone that would like to be heard on the public comment, privilege of the floor, on any topic, including any of the resolutions that are before us tonight?
Mr. Supervisor, Town Board, this is Jack Dodson, 1311 Cipriana Terrace.
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Thank you. Just following up on the agenda items tonight, I see that there's an agreement proposal in there for Bartlett Judas relative to replacement of the roof on the town hall. I also see in there that it looks like we may get our columns in our meeting room removed, which would be awesome. The question I had on that, does that also include any HV, heating and ventilating improvements that might be integral to the roof replacement?
We made those improvements, I believe. Now, so COVID is actually this crisis has unfortunately limited me in my timing. What I mean by that is I believe we did all that last year. We also have made improvements to the system for ensuring COVID, if you will, filtering. And I don't know how else to say it. There's some other dynamics there with I think UV rays and other things that we have already installed and at the senior center as well. So those improvements, I believe, have already been made.
Okay, I appreciate it on that. On the same line, you had just mentioned about the $3 million and making quality improvements for us. Does it going to include the audio, video improvements within the town meeting?
So we have. Why don't you ask the rest of it, Mr. Dotson? Because you have to talk, and then I'll answer everything at once.
Okay, I'm going to go on to just the police report and the our policing reform. I did see in the back of that some very good graphics and stuff. Did notice a significant increase in crime in the town of Rotterdam for larcenies, assaults, etc. From 2019, and this would be in 2020 when this occurred. Was an explanation provided for that significant increase in crime? I'll continue. The last meeting, in the consent agenda items, there was basically a settlement agreement with the apartment owners on Carmen Road relative to the sewer project over there. And I did notice in there that as part of that agreement that the equivalent dwelling unit charge is going to be cut in half for those apartment owners. And I think there's a stipulation in there they had, I think, up to 7 years to connect. My comment on that is, did the engineering consultant Chazen look at the impact of that change in EDU? And as the board knows, you guys had public hearings with all the benefited users of those districts, giving them the maximum amount to be expended and what a cost would be to a typical property owner. And what the impact of that negotiated settlement is on the overall EDU charge for all those districts. And when I say all those, I'm talking Hamburg Original, the Curry Road districts, the Carmen Road districts, and Whispering Pines. And then last but not least, I know we're finally getting through this COVID mess. One of the things I know the public would love to see as we continue to move out of COVID is a return to our public meetings at Town Hall. And if there's a date set for that. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Okay, and anyone else on public comment, privilege of the floor?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. Supervisor, it's Shenandoah Breer from the Daily Gazette. So you guys are looking at having a public comment period on March 22nd and a public hearing on the 24th.
Yeah, the reform, that's the collaborative will have that meeting on the 22nd.
Okay. And then when you say there's a meeting on April 1st to adopt a local law, what is the local law?
That would be for the proposed, the recommendations that are made through the Reform and Reconciliation.
So you're going to, I just want to make sure I'm clear here. So the recommendations are going to become a local law.
Much of what you see will become a local law. Yeah, there'll be that and other, if you will, details from that Reform and Reconciliation executive order that'll be included in the law.
Okay. All right. Just wanted to square away those details. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you. Okay, is there anyone else this evening like to speak? Public comment, privilege of the floor. Anyone else this evening? If you're on a phone, I think you have to hit *6 to unmute yourself so that you know that. I think that's what it is.
I did send a request to each person asking them to unmute.
All right, I'll address some of these things at the end here. I'd like to try to get through the agenda and we'll talk, because in case the board has some other comments they want to make from some of the questions that were asked here, and I'll address some of these other issues at the end of the meeting. So if there's no one else for public comment, privilege of the floor, I'll declare that we're closed for public comment, privilege of the floor, and let's move into the resolutions. Ms. Marco, the first resolution, please.
A resolution amending the Rotterdam Town Board meeting schedule.
Okay, may I have a motion, please?
I'll make the motion.
A motion by Mr. Christou. Is there a second, please?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Signor. Anyone on the question? Okay, Ms. Marco, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Christou,
Yes.
Mr. Gittarelli,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera,
Yes.
Mr. Signor,
Yes.
and Mr. Tomazone.
Yes.
So Steve, I just want to ask one question. So the two changes would be March 22nd and April 1st, correct?
Yeah, yes, and then there's change made. There's change made.
Kate's saying no. Kate's saying no.
No,
I'm
sorry.
saying no because the collaborative as well as the executive order 203 is something that the chief executive does on their own. And so therefore it's up to Steve to call for that additional public hearing that is legally required under the executive order. So Diane, there's only the public hearing for the local law, which they're voting on tonight, still exists, right? So that's at the regularly scheduled meeting of 3/24. And then the special meeting would be for 4/1. And then that will be for the adoption of the local law. But the public comment has to be included as a part of that, which is why the supervisor is discussing essentially the various different forms and opportunities for public comment, as well as the hopeful ability for us to have some of those comments potentially be in person, which is why it's to be determined as of
Thank you.
but hopefully that gets clarified by tomorrow.
And
Thanks.
the other change, Ms. Marco, to match what we're putting on our website is the 6:30 p.m. agenda review. that's the change too. There was an update to that. If the copy you have still says 5:30, it was changed to 6:30. They did
Gotcha.
in the final. And then we'll move, we may have to do this again, as we return to in-person meetings, we'll change that and hopefully be able to meet earlier so that we can get more done in person. So we have a motion by Mr. Christou, a second by Mr. Signor. Is there anyone else on the question?
Well, all of a sudden mine's off. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right, because the whole screen is just off, so I'm just going to continue reading. I
All
have
right.
no idea what's going on with this
We
crazy
can
Zoom.
hear you fine.
We can see you, Diane.
Well, I can't see you guys, so I'm going to continue.
Yeah, you can hear us. So
right.
you want to call the roll, Ms. Marco?
Mr. Christou,
Yes.
Mr. Gittarelli,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera,
Yes.
Mr. Signor,
Yes.
and Mr. Thomasone.
Yes.
5 yes.
Okay, next resolution, Ms. Marco.
A resolution calling for a public hearing to adopt a local law pursuant to Executive Order 203.
Okay, may I have a motion, please?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Christou. Is there a second, please?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Signor. Okay, anyone on the question? Ms. Marco, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Christou,
Yes.
Mr. Gittarelli,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera,
Yes.
Mr. Signor,
Yes.
and Mr. Thomasone.
Yes.
5 yes.
The resolution passes. Next resolution?
A resolution referring a change of zone request to the planning board for report and recommendation.
Okay, may I have a motion, please?
I'll make the motion.
Who did said that? Was that
Steve
Steve?
and I second it.
Okay, was Steve? Okay, that's what I thought. And seconded by Mr. Christou. Okay, anyone on the question? So on the question, I'll just mention this property, formerly known as Joe's Pizza Place on Hamburg Street. What's happening is we're giving a report, we're asking for the planning commission to give us a report and recommendation on a zoning change there to be basically our Main Street. It's a mixed use zoning, which will allow for more than one use on that property, and uses that are kind of, if you will, not necessarily related to one another, like a restaurant and apartments there. So in order to get the zoning classification appropriate and for all the other changes that the applicant and the owner has made there, I don't know if you've been by there lately, but it looks fantastic. I was in the property about 1.5 to 2 years ago, I think, when he was just starting to make some changes and changes to the other properties that are on that parcel. They've invested a tremendous amount of time and money there. I think it looks fantastic. So that's all I have to say about that. And that's what we're doing here. So we're asking the planning commission to give the town board a recommendation. So we have a motion by Mr. Signor and a second by Mr. Christou. Is there anyone else on the question? Okay, Ms. Marco, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Christou,
Yes.
Mr. Gittarelli,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera,
Yes.
Mr. Signor,
Yes.
and Mr. Thomasone.
Yes.
5 yes.
The resolution passes. Next resolution, please.
A resolution to authorize the supervisor to enter into agreement with GAR Associates.
Okay, may I have a motion, please?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mr. Christou. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Okay, second by Mr. Gittarelli. Anyone on the question? So on the question, this is strictly to do with software that is used within the assessor's office. The current company that they've been using is not supporting the software that we've been using, or the assessor's office has been using for some time. GAR happens to have a proprietary piece of software that they use, that they've developed. And we're basically getting the ability to use that software in our assessor's office. Okay, so we have a motion by Mr. Christou, second by Mr. Gittarelli. Anyone else? Okay, Ms. Marco, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Christou,
Yes.
Mr. Gittarelli,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera,
Yes.
Mr. Signor,
Yes.
and Mr. Thomasone.
Yes.
5 yes.
Resolution passes. Now we have a consent agenda for resolution for FP mailing solutions for the court. Resolution for CT Mail Associates having to do with landfill monitoring and such. Resolution for Barton Judas, which we discussed earlier regarding the roof and other structural improvements in the town hall. Resolution calling for bids for engineering support for the town of Rotterdam Police Department, which is IT support and the like. And the town clerk's revenue, the authorizing the director of finance to close inactive capital project and reserve funds, which I'll talk to in a moment. Resolution for budget transfers for 2020, and a resolution adopting the town board minutes from the prior meeting. Can I have a motion for the consent agenda, please?
Mr. Supervisor, I make a motion that the remaining resolutions be voted on as a consent agenda.
Okay, a motion by Mr. Christou. Is there a second, please?
I'll second.
Ms. Miller Herrera, I was waiting for you to pop in there. Thank you. Saw the mute go off and I said she's going to second this resolution. Thank you very much.
My children stopped crying, so I could turn the mute off.
You're blessed. Okay. So on the one, I want to talk a little bit about the inactive project.
Steve, can I take the vote?
Oh, well, can you wait a minute on the question?
Oh, sure.
Well, first, don't we, Mr. Supervisor, don't we first have to agree on the consent agenda and then
Okay.
another motion to vote on it?
You want to do that first? Sure. I was going to describe this before we did that, but go ahead.
Hey, I need your help. Okay.
Everyone knows what they're doing. I think it's just you're out of the rhythm, and now you're gonna have a meeting every 2 weeks, and you're gonna have extra meetings, and you're gonna get so good at it. And
So much-
Mr. Christou,
Yes.
Mr. Gittarelli,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera,
Yes.
Mr. Signor,
Yes.
and Mr. Thomason.
Yes,
5 yes, thank you.
That was to create the consent agenda.
yes.
Now-
Correct.
Now discussion.
Okay. So some time ago, and I'll say it was probably 6 months or so ago, when I had a prior discussion with our internal, our auditor, the auditing firm that we use for our finances, Cusack and Company. And there were several inactive capital project accounts that had not been closed out, and it's not hard to do it, but there's some technical aspects of it that need to be addressed. And Ms. Greenwood's addressed all those, and what we're going to do is allocate what we can towards debt service, if you will, in those different special districts and so on. So that's what we're going to do with all these funds. They had told us to do this last year after Beth came in here and appointed as director of finance. She and I had that discussion, and as you know, we're progressing in a lot of different avenues here to get things squared away, and so we'll be putting those funds to use instead of just leaving them, frankly, sitting out there making no interest for us. So we'll be paying down some debt with that money, using it for debt service. Okay, that's the one I really wanted to talk to because the other ones I think we already discussed pretty much. So, all right, now let's have another motion.
Mr. Supervisor, I make a motion, we approve the consent agenda.
Okay, motion by Mr. Christou. Ms. Miller Herrera,
I'll second.
seconded by Ms. Miller Herrera. Mute came off. Okay. Anyone else on the question?
Mr. Supervisor, just want to note for the record on the Barton and LaJudas proposal, and clearly it would be silly to spend 6 figures on a new roof without using a structural engineer. But I want to note that the construction contract on-site representation not to exceed $18,000 may not be used if we have manpower within our own people, as we did with the senior center.
That's correct. And as you see that detailed in there, it's more than just the roof, and particularly getting rid of that, at least the one beam there that is between Mr. Gittarelli, where Mr. Gittarelli traditionally sits and Ms. Marco traditionally sits, has been something that I've wanted to get rid of for many, many moons. And I can just tell you in the past, I think the cost would have been about $5,000 when I wanted to do it, and I couldn't get the board to support that. I don't know what it'll cost now, but I just wanted you to be aware that I've been trying to do that now for a long time. So I appreciate the efforts here. And again, we have to get the roof fixed and get these skylights out of there that continue to leak into the supervisor's office. And then we'll be able to get these other projects that we want to get done in town hall to become more COVID compliant, make the offices just better working environments as far as desks and just everything. We need to get upgraded, and we're going to do that. So the roof first.
Supervisor, do we have a timeline on the removing the support in the middle of the room?
Well,
Joe,
is that the support that blocks your face when everyone's looking?
yes,
Mine.
I'd rather leave it.
both of them.
Oh, all right. I can see why Joe wants it out.
So, I don't want to say too much because I don't want to talk for the engineers, but we looked up there. We've got to put a piece of steel up there and do some work up there. That part is probably the easy part. Dismantling a little bit of that dais to get that beam from the ceiling to the floor there, that's going to take a little bit more work. So we got to get we're going to need a decent carpenter, and I know somebody, and we'll have to talk to him about maybe coming in there and do that for us, because someone that I know won't make it. They'll do a good job with it and take it apart and put it back together so that we can have a nice contiguous dais there. So we'll be doing that. That's going to cost us a couple of bucks just for that, but I want to make sure that it looks good. So yeah, sooner that's going to have to happen obviously before we get the roof done, right? So we'll get there. So anyone else on any other questions here? Okay, Ms. Mark, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Christo,
Yes.
Mr. Gitterelli,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller Herrera,
Yes.
Mr. Signor,
Yes.
and Mr. Thomaso.
Yes.
Did you say yes, Steve?
Yeah. Yes,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, 5 yes, thank you.
I was looking down reading when I said it. So, as far as information contained within the, I'll say within the report for the Reform and Reconciliation from the police department, I'm going to defer to the collaborative and to the command of the police department to address any of those kinds of concerns. And I noted that as far as the numbers, as far as if there was an increase in anything or a decrease in any crime or any level of anything that needs to be tracked, if you will. I think that percentages are one thing, numbers are another. And when one of the meetings that I did go to, I'll just speak for myself, that I did go to was the first one. And in that meeting, there was some really substantive and robust discussion about what all those different statistics and numbers meant, and why there might have been an increase in one area over another. And I think that the police department the command staff, the chief, deputy chief, and the lieutenants did a great job at addressing all that. I would ask that that looking through that report, if you really take a closer look at it, and if you have some issues or if you will, there's questions that you have because you have concerns, please, email use the email addresses and get that information out there, or attend the additional meetings here that we're going to have, and we can, we'll ensure that obviously at our next meeting when we have the public hearing, the command staff of the department will be on our meeting here and be able to address a lot of that information. They can definitely answer those questions. As far as the settlement agreement, what appeared on in the agenda, the last meeting was the agreement that was provided or that we were asked to consider from the property owners, a couple of property owners on Carmen Road. That's not the one that we're agreeing to or agreed to. That's still being worked out. But I wanted the board to have that so they could see what, publicly show what those property owners were asking for, contemplating. So there have been no changes to any of that. Current information. Now, there's an issue. There may be an issue that the board will consider, or, some changes that the board would consider. And if there are changes that have any effect on any of the filings, any of the calculations or anything like that, our engineer, it's Chazen Engineering, will make those changes, and then we will follow the rules. So if you will, the law, to refile if necessary. So that was an offer that was made to the board, to the town. That's what I thought it was important and informative to let the board and the public know that, we're engaging in active dialogue with property owners when we are doing these projects. Having said that, in this particular area in Carmen Road, thus far, every one of the easements that we have was granted without compensation, I believe, of any kind. So in other words, people understand the benefit of having the sewer line. They have the benefit of having this infrastructure, going to their properties, whether it's a home or a business. But there are relevant and necessary concerns, in particular, that some of these property owners have, and we're trying to address those in a fair and a collaborative manner, so that we're not, looking at, and no one here, and I can tell you that, and some of us on the board here have had independent conversations with one or more of those property owners there, and it's not, we're not in an adversarial position here with any of them. It's a situation where they're looking at their economics and trying to make sure that they don't drive up the cost for somebody who's renting, or not driving up the cost to someone that can afford it. And that's not what we're trying to do here. As you know, with Hamburg Street, the cost there came down dramatically because of the Whispering Pines project, and the Whispering Pines project alone drove the cost down to about $300 per EDU on Hamburg Street this year. So, from 1,000 plus. So, there's definitely advantages to continuing to have the dialogue with property owners. And again, most of this line also is not going to be, it's going to be off the road, if you will. So there's going to be some disruption of traffic, but nothing on the level that we had with Hamburg Street. That was really rough. And so again, thus far. Hey, Diane, I see your hand pretty good there.
I can't.
We can see you fine. Leave it right where it is. Don't move it.
Oh,
Diane, if you look down at the bottom, there should be an icon that's a Zoom icon. Just click on that and it'll bring up the full screen.
Oh,
I thought it would too, but for some reason, I don't know. I'm done.
So, yeah. So if and when there's any final agreements on any of this, there will have to be a board resolution on any of these matters having to do with that sewer line on Carmen Road or anywhere else. So, and there's other things that I would love to, I'd love to mention, but I don't like to affect people's property values. So what I mean by that is that, we're going to be, once we find out about these federal funds here, I'm going to more actively work with the board to pursue, one or more property, one or more spots here in areas in our community where we can get this Western Park up and running. And we'll look at a combination of grants and other opportunities, private sector, if you will, private, and then also on the state level through Parks and Rec and whatever else we can do. So I'm excited about it. And one of the discussions that, people will have with me having to do with, and I'm just going to say this publicly, state or national political issues. I really can't worry about that. I have to worry about what's good for the community, what's good for the town. And, those monies are coming to us, and I think we need to put them to good use and do something, again, that's long-term and goes, again, beyond our tenure on the board. So that's all I've got. Does anybody else have anything else or any questions that you want to ask of me?
On the resolutions?
Oh, no, anything. You have anything under miscellaneous or committee reports or?
Yeah, question for you, Steve. With respect to, I know there's an article about the phase 2.
Mhm.
if there's a consensus that we need not move into phase two, where do we go from there?
So I want to be very careful in what I say here. But I can tell you that the Barclay Damon, the individuals at Barclay Damon, they're conducting the audit.
Yep.
Did meet, and I don't want to put words in people's mouths, but did meet with command staff at the police department, and there was an affirmative to pursue phase two. And that was all part of our original engagement with Barclay Damon, was 1 and 2. So now we're in 2, and we'll go from there. I don't want to say any more than that. And we should conclude, it should be concluded quickly. And I'll say that too, should be concluded quickly.
Is there any kind of cap on the expense on that, Mr. Supervisor?
I don't, so how should I say this and not sound appropriate? I'm going to say that I don't know if you can put a cap on ensuring the safety of the public, and I don't know if you can put a cap on any of that. Plus, one of the other things that I keep hearing about is has to really do with a word that I really don't like much, but it's politics, and that is that I don't think that we can that you can put a value on ensuring the public safety of everybody in town, and more importantly, I don't think that there should be any politics involved when it comes to ensuring that our documenting the sex offender registry has been done appropriately and accurately under the state in accordance with the state laws. I don't know what else to say to that.
Well, just if I may interject, first of all, I don't think either any opinion on this is really political. I think that, of course, the safety and well-being of the public is first and foremost. Clearly, I think acknowledgement to the police department should be made, as they have been fully cooperative. Phase 2 has already started. Without issue, the deputy chief turned over whatever documents were needed, I believe, yesterday. So, that milk is already out of the cow. I guess the only thing that concerns me is if we do not approach this way correctly, and if we do not communicate correctly, we run the risk of kind of really demoralizing the police department, and I don't want to see that happen. I've said from the first day that I've been on this dais that there's really never a value in creating an adversarial relationship. And not that this was done intentionally in this point. I don't think any board member had any malicious intent. But as this thing has moved forward with the press getting involved and, certain things being reported, other things not being reported, I personally want to make sure that the rank and file knows that they have this board's complete support, and that that there was no muscle flexing here or anything to try to demoralize them in any way, shape, or form.
And I'll answer that this way. I think that if you go back to the press release that we did put out, because of, and I don't want to go back through this again, frankly, but that was it was front and center. Is it the rank and file and everyone else is, think we're fine. The issue here is very simple, in my opinion, is that we had information presented to us. We took action to ensure that what we're doing has been done appropriately and right, and the recommendations that were already made by Barclay Damon, if you will, those working on this, that we have a report and recommendations, that those recommendations, while some of that was accomplished, was being done or had been done, or was in process of being done, now we have those report and recommendations solid to ensure that moving forward where we need to be. As far as anything else, from your comments, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. And you and I have had these conversations many times, Mr. Christou, and you and I both agree on all that. I mean, there's no question. I do think that people unfortunately interpret words differently. And at the same time, what we have happening around us is that sometimes people become involved who shouldn't be involved, and I'll say it like that. And then, we're not able to do exactly what it is that we intended to do. Remember, we're in the public domain. This is not a private sector concern. And so what I mean by that is in a private sector concern, you may be able to control the narrative and the messaging, and the people that work for you can very easily work together and get things accomplished. When it comes to the public domain, unfortunately, people's own agendas take course. And I wish that wasn't the case. You know, when I think the five of us approach this, we approach this from a position of, let's make sure that we're doing it right. And that's it. There's never an intention on anything else. And that's all I have to say.
I guess my concern was in light of the first phase and what we saw, which I was very pleased with. I just didn't know the necessity of having to go forward, but is it something beyond our control at this point in time to tell Barclay and Damon, hey, listen, thanks so much. We're satisfied, or do we have to actually, do pursue it?
I'm going to say this. I think in order to effectively close this chapter for us in the town, the phase 2 will be completed. And like I said, I believe it'll be completed shortly. I don't think we're going to have the length of time that we had with phase 1. And I don't want to go through those machinations with all of you, because again, there's been a lot of things going on, unfortunately, and I'll call it behind us. And that is something that is unfortunate. So all I'm going to say to that is that we're going to see this conclude very quickly. I do believe that the attorneys who made that presentation last meeting did a very good job at basically saying that there were things that if you read their report of recommendations, they didn't necessarily say, what they were doing was the report of recommendations is a positive step forward. This is what we think you should do. These are the to be effective to comply with SORA. This is what you have to do. And again, I think that once we get this phase 2 concluded, there may be no more recommendations, that we may be complete. And but the phase 2, Mr. Signor, is a much, I'm going to say hopefully a much shorter time period. So I would anticipate that we should know, again, unless we find out something else that I don't know about, because of obviously originally the reason we pursued this was because there were things that we did not know about, before month's end, we should have this concluded, because, it's my intention, and I know that that's been communicated to the law firm, if you will, doing the audit, not just by me, but by our town council, that we want to make sure that we find out whatever we need to find out, so that we can, if there's anything that needs to be included with the reform and reconciliation, we can do it right away. So that's all I have to say to that.
I would word it differently, Mr. Stewart. I would
Go ahead.
kind of word it as confirming that there's nothing more there that really needs anything.
Yes, very good.
Referring back to the very good, I agree with you. The presentation by Barclay Damon was good. And, I think it's noteworthy to repeat once again that they did mention that our police department's practices far exceed what is demanded or what is required by SORA. And I guess one of the recommendations was to take those practices and document them. So
And again,
that was your positive step forward, I believe.
well, right. And what you're referring to is current practices.
Right.
Okay. So I just want to get that out there for the record.
And we're hoping to get this whole thing out public as soon as phase 2 is done.
Well, when you say out public, I think that
Well,
that's going to be determined as, but yes, I mean, that we will get, we wanted to get ahead of all this. Again, reform and reconciliation has presented every community with, and I don't want to use the word challenges, because I don't think that's the right word to use. Just that there's just a lot of intricacies here that we have to acknowledge and we have to abide by. And I think that our police department has done a great job with that. In particular, the meetings that they're having and involving the public. And I think that the better part of all this, frankly, is that these are all like I don't want to call them first steps. That's also right. from here forward, particularly with the Reform and Reconciliation, I think we'll have much more happening, community-based activities, if you will, that'll be better bringing the community and our law enforcement together. So that's what I'll say to that. I think, that I'm passionate about it. This is not a situation where there's.
Yeah, and I think from a general public perspective, it's going to validate the view we've always had of the police department, that they do an outstanding job, and they've always done an outstanding job. And I just wanted to get this behind us like everyone else, so.
Yes, 100% agree, yeah.
Supervisor, I'd like to make a comment. So my only concern with, I guess, reading in the paper today, we were proceeding with phase 2, was that I know our last meeting, we kind of ended it that we were going to get back and meet again and discuss what was in the results of the phase 1. And also, as you mentioned, there was another meeting that took place with Barton and with Mark.
I'm just gonna-
And we were going to have the ability to get back and discuss, where do we go from there? Do we go with phase 2? Do we not?
So Joe, you're now waiving knowingly and voluntarily the attorney-client privilege in relation to your meeting with the attorney?
Okay.
Or no? I mean, you're treading some territory there.
Back to, I was under the assumption we were going to have another meeting and discuss moving into phase 2 before we did. So that was my concern with, like I said, finding out today that we moved ahead with phase 2. I did agree with the original audit in phase 1. Seemed like there may have been more, I guess, portrayed to this than there actually was. But like I said, my biggest concern was we did not have the ability, it seemed, as a board to make this decision going into phase 2.
I can't even comment any further. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Anyone else?
And I'm not looking for a comment. That was it. That's, like I said, that was my concern with ending up where we did today in phase 2.
Amazing. Anyone else? And any committee reports or anything under miscellaneous?
Mr. Supervisor, I make a motion to adjourn.
Okay. We have a motion for adjournment by Mr. Christou. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Okay, second by Mr. Signor. All in favor of adjournment, signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
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 Opposed? All right. Thank you, everyone, for attending this evening, and have a good night and have a great weekend. Bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you.